Hi, this is Mark News from Plant Talk Radio. Thanks for subscribing and listening to our Plant of the Week podcast, brought to you by Bonide Products, family made in America. Visit Bonide.com to find a retailer near you. Each week, Plant Talk Radio's Fred Hauer focuses on a plant that would be a great addition to your landscape. Now for this week's Bonide Products Plant of the Week. Fred, your Plant of the Week.
Plants.
Of course.
Of course. There's so much happening right now. It doesn't seem like it should be in the fall, but there are several things that are quite outstanding. The beautyberry, Calicarpa, if you go looking for one, and Mark has been looking for one for a year now, has not found it in the normal garden centers. But at the same time, that plant usually is one you cut back in the spring, much like you would a mum. It starts to grow, then it flowers and fruits on the new stems. The new stems will come out of a crown, out and really from a center crown, out and splay out at about 3.5 feet high, and maybe up to 5 or 6 feet wide. And each stem, as it flowers, the little clusters that are paired on the stem form, and I measured one the other day out at the Farm Science Review. The clusters of flowers in pairs running along that stem were a little over 2 feet long.
Yeah,
that is something else when the sun's dancing off of it.
Especially the transition from the darker color at the start until they get to the new berries at the end that are still green.
They're still green, and they're tiny like little bitty BBs, but at the same time, fantastic. Another one that I like to mention, I like to try to keep people advised on what can be used in the shade. Nothing spectacular about it other than right now it's in full fruit. It's called snowberry. It is kind of an understory plant. Nothing flashy enough that you'd put it out in the, full golden area for the main thing in your yard. But snowberry right now is running about 3 feet tall. Again, loose stems coming up from a crown, but the flower clusters and now the fruit are just about, as it is said, white as the driven snow. They're maybe 3/8 or a little bit more in diameter. They're a soft white. They don't have any dash to the sheen of the color, but they're absolutely remarkable right now because they're up against kind of a green foliage, and they're really great in the sun, but they're also pretty darn good in the shade, especially this time of year, plus being just a filler other times of the year. And then I was driving with the sun just in the right spot when I turned a corner, and a bed of sedum, one of what Grandma used to call a live forever, was just absolutely spectacular. There probably were, I'm guessing, 50 to 70 plants of that, and in the backyard at most homes you wouldn't you wouldn't expect to use that many of one kind of thing. But this was in a commercial area and part of other assemblies of that nature, and then it was repeated on down the way in this particular situation, and the glow of reddish was just something else. And as I say, I must have been there at the right millisecond to see it with the sun dancing off of it and so on, but really fantastic this time of year.
And Fred, most of the sedum that you see has that sort of, it turns that beautiful dusty rose sort of color, but we saw some at the Farm Science Review that they had planted that was almost a bright purple.
Yeah, there are, excuse me, I think there are 200 kinds of sedum, all the way from little creatures that barely stand above the soil level on up to the types that Mark just mentioned that are, 15 or so inches tall, flower heads or fruit heads at this point in time that are 4 or so inches across. And when you plant them roughly 18 inches apart, and you have, like I say, this 50 to 70, there's an awful lot of color there. And it's one of what we'll call the fall colors. It's a rosy, rusty reddish that is good any time of day in just the outdoor situation like we have this morning. But then when the sun dances off of it just right, wow.
And, before it turns, it's kind of a, gee whiz, kind of a lemony green, and it's very pretty in the garden.
Well, it is pretty in the garden, and you have to be careful not to violate patent rights, but it's one of those plants that right after a rain, if you wish, to give some to a neighbor, literally go out with a hand trowel or just pull them out of the ground, get them planted before the roots dry out, and you've got a whole new planting of the plants.
Now, what'd your grandmother call them?
Live forevers.
Yep. She never gave one to me. I think she, that may go right there. Thanks again for listening to our podcast, brought to you by Bonide Products at Bonide.com. Plant Talk Radio offers other podcasts as well, including our daily Your Gardening Question podcast and our weekly Plant Talk Radio, all available on iTunes or your preferred podcast player. If you have a plant suggestion for Fred, send him an email, fred@planttalkradio.com.